Today, I want to discuss the most anticipated LEGO Technic set of the year, the McLaren P1. Now, at a glance, this set doesn't make much sense. When we review the prior Technic 1/8 supercars, we see a pattern of LEGO attempting to capture the essence of a brand new vehicle. 2016 saw the release of this Porsche 911 GT3 RS, which was a brand new release for the model year 2016. Similarly, in 2018, LEGO gave us the Bugatti Chiron, brand new for 2018. 2020 saw the Lamborghini Sian, and 2022, the Ferrari Daytona SP3. You get the picture. Each model brand new for its year. So this begs the question, why would LEGO choose the McLaren P1 to immortalize for their biannual flagship release? An 11-year-old hypercar, seemingly outdated and outpaced by modern equivalents. Great question, Grandma. Well, park your geriatric booty right over there, and I will tell you why the P1 was actually the perfect choice. Probably the best choice they've done yet. To illustrate my point, we're going to need a little history lesson, but I promise this will be interesting. So McLaren is a very interesting car company, especially in its earlier years. Skipping over the years where they weren't making production cars, doing mostly racing, I want to take you to the early 90s. Yes, the early 90s blessed the world with two distinct and equally important events: the birth of a certain clever pig himself and the McLaren F1. Few would disagree that the McLaren F1 isn't an important car. Hell, I'd bet that at least one of you watching this video considers the McLaren F1 to be their favorite car ever. Like, you guys, I really can't overstate the importance of the F1 in the automotive world. The F1 was easily the fastest production car when it was released. The 6.1 liter naturally aspirated BMW V12 took the F1 to 240 miles per hour, a record which would stand for almost a decade until the Bugatti Veyron would eventually dethrone it. But to this day, the McLaren F1, 31 years old, still the fastest ever naturally aspirated production vehicle. It's incredible. But after the F1, McLaren seemingly dropped off the map. They were even listed as a dormant company before they released their next vehicle. McLaren had seemingly come out of the primordial ooze, dropped the greatest car the world had ever seen, and then just drifted back for like 18 years. Skipping forward to the modern era, McLaren came back swinging in 2011 when they released the MP4 12C. Powered by a 3.8 liter twin turbo V8, the MP4 12C was taking on the likes of the Audi R8 and Lamborghini Gallardo. And it was performing really well, but be honest, when you have the daily drivability of the R8 or the V10 glory of the Lamborghini Gallardo, they were just sort of filling a gap that never really existed. And also look at it. Yeah. Not going to win many beauty pageants down in McLaren with the MP4 12C. Fortunately, we wouldn't have to wait long for more. The year is 2013, 20 years after the release of the McLaren F1. McLaren has just announced a new car, poised to set the automotive world on fire. But they weren't alone. Ferrari and Porsche were also set to release new cars with similar claims. I distinctly recall these three auto brands getting ready to release these cars while simultaneously the premier automotive media, Top Gear, was kind of disintegrating at the same time. It was a pretty wild time in the automotive world, was 2013. and my second year university body could hardly take it anymore. And then it finally happened. Sweet release. Porsche released the 918, Ferrari, the LaFerrari, but McLaren gave us the P1. There is no denying the automotive prowess of each of these hybrid hypercars. But when it comes to design, I think the P1 stands above the crowd. The 918 just looks like a less exciting Carrera GT, and while the LaFerrari, there's no denying its beauty, at the time, Ferrari's entire design language was completely derivative of the 458, and so the LaFerrari just looks like a fancy 458, not exactly groundbreaking. And this brings me to why the P1 is so special and the perfect choice for the LEGO Technic supercar. Still with me, Grandma? Wake up, dinner's in 45 minutes. The McLaren P1 has defined the modern McLaren design language. Look at the models since then and you will clearly see the inspiration. The McLaren logo headlights of the 650S, the air channels along the shoulder of the 720S, or even the recessed door panels of the McLaren Senna. Now sure, you may call me slightly or overly biased, but I think the McLaren P1 is the most beautiful modern supercar, and easily the most beautiful McLaren ever produced. Sure, the F1 was a technical marvel, but ain't nobody hanging that wedge in a museum. Be real. My boy, the P1 was designed by the wind. An element so smooth you can't even see it. And when you can see it, you better get out of its way, because it's a tornado and you probably live in Oklahoma. I feel like you guys got tornadoes down in Oklahoma, don't you? But even more importantly than that, the world was introduced to the hybrid hypercar. The P1 and I guess the 918 and LaFerrari were effectively the first time we saw electric motors used to supplement the good old internal combustion engine, baby. If you are uncertain about how important that is, just remember we live in a world now where the flagship Lamborghini is a hybrid. So why did LEGO choose an 11-year-old car for their flagship Technic model? Because it is perfect. While not as shiny or as unique as perhaps the Chiron, Sian, or SP3, but way more shiny and unique than a GT3 RS. Like, sweet lord, it's not even close. The P1 is infinitely more important to the automotive landscape than the other LEGO supercars on the list. But how did LEGO do? Did they manage to capture the essence, that ever so fleeting essence, of one of the most important hypercars of the modern era? Well, let's dig a little deeper and find out. So, if you ask me, there is no more premium LEGO offering than the Technic 1/8 supercar line. Everything about these sets is well thought out, intentional, and bespoke to each model. As LEGO is already a premium product, or so they would have us believe, the McLaren P1 has a very large legacy to live up to. So does the P1 fit right in with the previous offerings? Does it manage to stand above its other siblings? Or is this set living in the shadow of giants? Naturally, the first impression you will get of the set is the box. And the thing about first impressions is you only get one. And as mentioned, since the other Technic 1/8 sets have a history of greatness, this had better be good. While I'm still a bit on the fence about this color scheme, I think the blue and orange would be more at home on a superhero than it is on a supercar. But I do really like the carbon fiber print, and I think they did well to choose the rear lights to display, one of the most iconic areas of the car. Opening the box, and I gotta say things get a bit worse. We're treated to a view of the real P1 overlaid on top of the Lego variant. This is all fine and dandy, but it's done with these huge flaps which are attached to boxes 2 and 3. And when you pull them out, it makes things a bit weird. You've got these small rectangular boxes with these huge flaps sticking off them. It's just a bit strange. And beyond that, the instruction manuals sit below the boxes. Now, time for a little more history, this time Lego related. The only thing I have to compare the unboxing to is the previous models, and Lego took a noticeable shift in the design of the boxes between the Bugatti Chiron and the Lamborghini Sian. The Porsche and the Bugatti had the wheels displayed when you open the box, the manuals right front and center, and there's 5 boxes sort of making a nest for the manuals. It's very nice. I like it a lot. The Lamborghini and the Ferrari, however, they sort of try to emulate the design of the car itself on the box. And I don't like it as much. It feels a little bit toyish, which is a weird thing to say because this is a toy brand. But bear in mind, these are like $400, $500, $600 sets, depending on where you live. They're very much collector's items. These aren't built for children. When I was lined up to buy this set, it was all grown-ass men looking to buy it. So we just need to be real with ourselves for a minute. And the P1 here kind of falls in the middle. From the outside, it's very much like the 911 or the Chiron, but on the inside, it's got the interior boxes set up more like the Lamborghini or the Ferrari. Another one of the defining features of these sets are their bespoke wheels. Every single set has unique wheels, and I think that should be celebrated. I think they should be displayed. They're special, and I like the way they did it with the Porsche and the Bugatti, and by just stuffing it in a random box at the end feels kind of lame. Moreover, the flaps on these boxes, they kind of hold the set back. Like, take a look at this. Can you see that? Like, that's weird. That's not normal. That's not a normal box. I think the peak box design was the Chiron by quite some margin, actually. It had the wheels displayed nicely. They're beautiful wheels too. And then the boxes form the nest. And when you put all the boxes and the instruction manuals together properly, it shows the headlights of the Chiron. Oh, beautiful, beautiful look. But then it gets better because you can flip the boxes around, as well as, I think, either the second instruction manual or flip the manual over, and it'll show the taillights of the Chiron. Like, they didn't have to do that. Nobody would have ever said anything, and they could have not done that, but they did it. And it makes it that much more special. That much more premium. But enough rambling about the box. We should ramble about the actual finished model. Actually, hold up. We actually should probably ramble about the instructions for a couple minutes. Let's do that. The instructions are split among 2 books. They look cool, but again, they kind of suffer from that weird color choice, blue and orange. It is quite a choice, to say the least. Now, in my opinion, these instruction manuals are okay. They include lots of great information about the real car, about the designers and the design process, which I love. There is also a podcast if you are into that sort of thing. I am not, but if you are, and toward the ass end of the second book, I mean, first of all, look at that shot. Ooh, that's beautiful. But you get a little QR code, and you can input your specific serial number from your P1 set to get access to bonus content. You get some cool little downloadable wallpapers. Again, if you're into that sort of thing, I am not, but you get them, And that's fantastic. It's a little extra step that makes your set that much more special, and I love it. But again, I must compare this to another model. So I got one more. Here, this is the instruction booklet from the 911 GT3 RS, the first Technic supercar. And this is by far the best Lego instruction manual I've ever seen. The thing is, when you look at it, it's pretty unassuming. Like, this just looks like a nice book that a Porsche enthusiast would have on their coffee table. And that's the thing. This was designed to be a coffee table book. This was designed to transcend the role of a Lego instruction manual. Like, you look at this, that does not look like a Lego instruction manual. You get a little hint of it. It says Lego Technic there. But the back, completely devoid of anything. It's got tons and tons of extra info. I'm on page 24 and nothing's happened. It's just info. I'm on page 30, still just info. This is great. I love that. So the two important things that make this the best Lego instruction manual there's ever been is that, and certainly that of the 1/8 supercars, is, like I said, it doesn't look like an instruction manual. And the second point is there's only one. As soon as there's two, I know it's an instruction manual and it's done. It's never going to live on a coffee table. It's never going to live on a bookshelf. It's just going back to the bottom of the box. This booklet lives on my shelf. I like it. I think it's nice. This will not ever be that. Unfortunately, it's too bad. I wish it did. The McLaren P1's my favorite car, one of my favorite cars ever. And I would love to have a special coffee table book about it, especially from a Lego set, but that ain't gonna happen. Okay, now I promise I'm done with the auxiliary items. Let's get on to the meat and potatoes. I'm gonna organize this review a little bit weird, so stay with me, all right? It's a trust exercise. So the build. At the end of the day, it's another one of the Technic 1/8 supercars, and you can definitely feel the similarities between this and its brethren. But that said, I will discuss the build briefly, as brief as I can. During the first stage, we build up the rear end and cabin area. There are some interesting bits here, including the rear wing mechanism, which goes up and down really smoothly, actually. It's got the new stiff suspension elements, which gives a nice feel to the whole suspension. The 3.9 liter twin turbo V8 is also represented here. And the gearbox is also kind of funny. I always feel like it's kind of like a magic trick if you've ever put one of these together. You pay attention to every little tiny gear, trying to figure out what's going on. But when you get to the end, everything happens so fast and the gearbox works, and you're just kind of left having no fucking idea what just happened. But it does work, and you do get a nice little marriage of the chassis kind of moment, similar to, but markedly less good, as the Bugatti Chiron. Similarly, the interior built up and it is functional, albeit not as impactful as the Bugatti Chiron. Man, that Chiron, it just really hit different, didn't it? And the gear selector in the middle allows you to choose the drive mode, actually. Middle's for neutral, pull it back for E mode, and push it all the way forward to access all 903 simulated horsepower through the hybrid drivetrain. Moving on to the second stage, the doors begin to be built up, which I'll discuss later in detail, but suffice to say, they're actually really awesome builds. And then the front suspension and steering wheel are attached. And the cabin is completed with some new A-pillar elements and a very nicely shaped roof, which includes a pretty accurate roof scoop, actually. And some panels on the back side of the roof, which even includes A little third brake light in there if you can see it. It's right in there. It's hard to see, but it's in there. All of this is done before moving on toward the front end, and by the end of stage 2, in fact box 2, the entire chassis is complete and the front end is basically sculpted. The final stage opens by finishing up the doors. Let's get them open. That. Boom. There's the money shot. And as I mentioned, these doors are incredible little builds. Hats off to the design team. They managed to capture the organic shapes of the P1 doors really well. And they've got some suspension elements baked into the chassis to help hold the doors open. So you get the full butterfly door effect, and it looks awesome. After that, the rear lights are built around the exhaust, and we finish off by doing the whole rear clamshell section, which again is a really cool build and has some really interesting angles and geometry to it. If you're interested in this set, even from a design standpoint, I'd recommend checking out the builds for the doors and the rear clamshell. They're really good. So I've had this unit sitting on my shelf for about a week now. I really wanted to let it sink in, you know, pick it up, look at it from different angles before giving you my amateur and extremely biased opinion. My bias, of course, is the subject matter. The P1 is my favorite modern supercar. As previously mentioned in the history segment, look at you for remembering. Good job taking notes there. This is why we're friends. The P1 helped to define the modern supercar. It's the most beautiful McLaren ever made and helped to define their design language for the past 11 years. Straight up though, it's pretty good. It's really good. Lego didn't let me down. This is gonna be strange, but I wanna start at the rear lights in particular. While they are certainly too thick compared to the real car, I do feel this is the best Lego could do. And the flex hoses and angled axle connectors do a really good job of representing the shape of the rear lights. The center exit exhaust also looks good and has a nice upward angle to it. Another item I haven't heard much talk about is these rear diffusers, which somehow manages to nicely capture the curves present in the P1's own diffuser. My only issue back here is the kind of unsightly knob used to raise the rear wing. But actually, let's move on to the rear wing. Another point of excellent design. Actually, maybe the best part of the whole design. It's really good. It moves up and down incredibly smoothly, like so. It's butter smooth. And beyond that, once you get towards the full extension, it actually kind of tilts up a little bit, just like the real thing does, which is awesome. Moving on from the rear, we arrive at the clamshell / hood section. We also arrive with my first issue of the set. You see, there are a couple of steps to get under the hood of the P1. First, you have to remove the rear wing. Well, we must do that. And then pull a couple of these orange pins out. And finally, access has been granted. I don't love that you have to take the wing off, but more importantly, I really don't like the off-colored orange pins that you have to take out. Admittedly, they're not that big of a distraction, but I just think for something that is the most premium Lego product, in my opinion, they should have just recolored these to bright light orange like the rest of the panels. There are dozens of that piece throughout the car that they could have made bright light orange and just chucked them into the build, called it a day, but they chose not to do that. Regardless though, once it is off, you get to see the great engine detail, including the gold foil over the exhaust components, which is an option that is almost certainly a nod to the gold foil lined engine bay of the McLaren F1, famously. Beyond that, as I mentioned before, the shaping on the clamshell is really good. Lots of subtle angles and weird geometries to obtain this shape. Really worth checking out. Heading further forward, the roof scoop captured quite well. I like it, looks nice. And we get to one of the best parts of the whole set, the doors, man. Like I said before, the doors are so good. If you look really closely, it's kind of hard to tell because it's black in the middle, but the doors of the P1 actually have some pretty weird shaping. The designer, Frank Stevenson, check him out on YouTube. He's got some really cool videos actually. He likened the body to being something that was shrink wrapped to fit the internals, and it really kind of looks like that. It looks like it's just hugging all the bits on the inside. No excess, no fluff, no garnish. And amazingly, the Lego set has captured those butterfly doors really, really well. The black vents, the subtle shaping, and the wind channels along the shoulder of the car, it's all there. It's really good. And beyond that, the inclusion of the suspension pieces means the Sir can display the car with its doors open if the Sir prefers. Oh, and I almost forgot. The mirrors. The mirrors are great. This is the first of the supercars to have well-represented mirrors. They're not even complicated, just a few small pieces in a simple build. And finally, they don't look like an afterthought. And anybody who says that they're moving away from the tradition of the old supercar mirrors, and that is a bad thing, that person is a moron and they are not to be trusted. I won't speak too much to the interior as I can describe it in one word: functional. It's got some cool prints for the center console / screen, as well as the gauge cluster, but I still don't know, and I haven't seen anybody else reference it. The center console is displaying the time 14:23 or 2:23 for us 12-hour folk. I'd really love to know if that's a reference to something. I can't find anything, but my gut kind of says it is. I don't know. Finally, let's turn our attention to the front, the most controversial part of the whole vehicle. I think it's fair to say most people who take issue with the looks of the P1 have issue with the front end, and I have thoughts. So let's begin with the hood. Hood? Is it a hood? Frunk, I guess. Got frunk. Frunk cover. It's not the actual frunk. I think they may have chosen the wrong pieces to represent the vents in the hood. They're kind of too long. They go all the way to the window, when in reality in the car, they don't do that. They kind of just go halfway. So that does look a little bit weird. Otherwise, things on the front cover look great. And there's even a little axle to prop it open. And glory of all glories, the luggage has returned, although this entry is pretty weak. Like, there's not even any McLaren branding. The afterthought is still existing. But now it's time, the elephant in the room. Time to get very serious about this plastic toy. The front lights. Yes, the most divisive part about the whole car. I think the designers kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. But to understand, we're gonna have to get a little bit nerdy, so strap in. So when I first saw the photos of the Lego P1 online, I didn't feel like they were representing the front headlights very well. I felt kind of like, as some others did, that they looked maybe more like the 600 LT headlights. But after looking closer, I think the design team actually did okay. So let's take a look at the real thing and the Lego set side by side to illustrate my point. I'm going to, actually illustrate a bit. See, with the color scheme on the Lego set being bright light orange and black, I think it sort of tricks our eyes into thinking that the headlights end where the white pieces end, but they don't. The lights come down further with these little bionicle pieces. The problem is that they're black, so it's hard to tell. I think perhaps a transparent color would have been better suited to the task, but I'd be eager to hear your thoughts on that particular point. Overall though, the P1 is great. The proportions are almost bang on, which definitely helps to carry the overarching look. And step back for a moment and appreciate with me how the design team managed to capture such an organic shape with plastic bricks. The front might be marginally on the short side, and the suggested A-pillar flex hoses need to be pushed forward a little bit as well, but I really can't complain. Similarly, I think the tires are a little on the low profile side, but I think it's pretty damn good. All the major design features, smooth curves, and aerodynamic features have been faithfully recreated. I mentioned before that my preferred area of LEGO Technic vehicle builds is the bodywork. I know this is somewhat counterintuitive to LEGO Technic. Like, LEGO Technic was built from the ground up to value function over form, but maybe that's exactly why I like it so much. The medium that the designers must use to create these models is actively working against them. So when they do manage to come up with creative solutions, find weird geometries, and capture these organic shapes, well, I respect the hell out of that. And in this case, the designers had the task of capturing the design of one of the most curvy, swoopy, organic shapes on the road. And you know what else? I think they did it. And they did it really well. LEGO did my boy good. I have met my hero, and I was not disappointed.